Now, 1 million rand, this is the financial redress, being demanded by a group of HIV-positive activists who were forcibly sterilised in government hospitals. In 2020, the Commission for Gender Equality released a report on its findings on what women living with HIV were subjected to in public health facilities across South Africa. Newzroom Afrika's Mohlaoli is at the Gender Equality Commission's briefing in Sandton. Tommy, good afternoon. Good to speak to you. That hefty sum of 1 million rand is being demanded by these women. What sort of number of women are we looking at?
Well, at this stage, Hugo, we're looking at just under 20 women. These are the women that were gathered here at the press briefing in Sandton, but they represent a wide range of similar stories right across the country in all provinces of South Africa. So they say that those numbers, the 20 or so that were gathered here, can be multiplied exponentially because there are millions of women who have gone through the same kind of trauma and same kind of, if one could say, inhumane ordeal. In fact, there was a very moving moment earlier when one of the women gave her testimony about just the physical, emotional and psychological scars that she endured after having been put through that process of being sterilized, saying that of course, at the time when the doctors were consulting with her at the hospital, it wasn't as if she was being given an option. And this is something that was echoed by many others who say that after this process has been undertaken, many had to then deal with the after effects, not only physically, emotionally, mentally, but also in terms of their relations with family. In terms of their relations with their partners, many have lost their relations, many have lost their breadwinners, many have lost their long-time lovers, and they find themselves in a situation whereby they say this figure, although it might seem hefty when you say it out loud, is not even a drop in the ocean in terms of what they have had to endure, and will help them rebuild their lives, but will not give them back even a fraction of what it is that they've lost due to this particular practice.
Now, Tommy, you talk about this, certainly the anguish and trauma associated with it. I can only imagine the level of stigma that would have been associated with these individuals at the time, particularly because I'd like to imagine that there wasn't a lot of knowledge around HIV and its implications.
Well, your imaginings are quite spot on there, Hugo, and this is something that the activists here alluded to as well. They say that they've had to really, if one can put it in this way, put their necks out to try and ensure that they lead the charge in trying to fight for the rights for those who have endured this very brutal kind of practice. And they say that it's not only having to deal with the medical side of things in terms of recovery, but in a society that was only really coming to grips and to terms with what HIV/AIDS is all about, or being HIV positive, and the fact that being HIV positive is not a death sentence, and people can manage and live very productive, healthy lives. And this is what these women were looking forward to, and were looking forward even to starting families, because with the correct kind of medical regimen and management, there's nothing to stop an individual living a healthy life like anyone else in the country or anyone else in the world. And so this has just come as something of a double blow. And of course, with the knock-on effect and what they have had to then let go of in terms of those who were abandoned by their spouses, those who had to endure some verbal and emotional abuse, even from those who one would assume would be there for them at their hour of need. That includes close relatives who have shunned them and turned their backs on them because of the decisions that were taken by the partners who decided to walk away. So it is indeed quite a bitter struggle that they are waging, these very brave women. And they say that the sum that they have reached is just something to make sure that the state and government acknowledges what they have gone through. Of course, the sum of 5 million each, they say, will never come close to replacing and making right what has been done in terms of how they've been wronged, but it is an acknowledgement that they are desperately seeking, an acknowledgement that they feel they are due because they are, innocent victims in something that has become, from what I've learned today, certainly quite a draconian practice when someone goes into a place of healthcare and leaves worse off than when they came in. And many are saying that, of course, also the medical bills that come with that and the recovery process is something that also is another story all by itself.
Well, in my story, I quoted 1 million rand. You've talked about 5 million rand per individual. So the assumption is that it's actually 100 million rand in total that is being filed for by these 20 women. Is that correct?
Yes, and you also must, Hugo, understand that it's 20 now here at the venue, but they say that, of course, they are engaging and going and holding, counsel with other women who've got similar stories to say that they can come on board and they are welcome to join their struggle, because they believe that it's not only them. So this figure is just a provisional figure that's been put out in terms of the individuals that address the media here at the press conference, but they represent a larger group, a silent larger group, one might say, because the activists here are very much conscious of the fact that there are still very many women out there who are affected or are living with HIV and are afraid to come out because, of course, although a lot has been achieved in terms of trying to demystify and kill the stigma around this virus, there is still a lot of stigmatization, particularly in very far-flung communities. And many of the women are saying that in those communities are fearful of coming out and disclosing their status because they could lose, as many of those who shared their stories here with us, lose partners, lose breadwinners, lose their support base in terms of families and relatives. So that is the general explanation and understanding of that figure. So it could be actually much, much more than what was described here.
Now, Tumaole, before we let you go, we've obviously got the 20 women that have come forward. Now, as this case gathers momentum, because we know that in 2020, that's when the Commission of Gender released its report, so it's 2 years ago, do we expect an exponential number of women to come forward? Do we have an idea of what that number could look like?
Well, at this stage, it's very difficult to gauge, but judging from what the woman here had to say, they hold a very realistic, very sober view of where they are in their struggle, and how they reflected this, which was quite telling, is the fact that they relayed how they have been lobbying and trying to get some kind of counsel or hold court with the highest office in the land, the office of the President of the Republic. And they say that at every turn they have sent letters, they've written emails, they have called. They've even gone so far as to go knocking directly at the door of the union buildings, and they keep getting what has been described as empty promises of, being called back or meetings that would be scheduled. And as soon as they turn their backs, then they can't get hold of officials from the presidency and from government, if I use that term in a broad sense. So in terms of the time frames, they certainly say that they've walked this road thus far, and they're prepared to go the whole 9 yards, and nothing will stop them to ensure that they do get those reparations, because what happened to them in terms of being effectively maimed, some of them, because many had to lose their wombs, so to speak, and they can't have children, or they've lost their ability to reproductive ability. And so this is something that they say that they'll go as far as they need to and keep waging the struggle until they do get that restorative justice.
There's our Tumaole Mohlaoli coming to us from Sandton, where a group of women, HIV-positive activists actually, were forcibly sterilised in government hospitals a few years ago, are demanding 100 million rand in reparations.